Welcome back, guys, or if you're new to my channel, this is Automotive Anonymous. That's my Toyota RAV4 Hybrid. Specifically, though, it's an SE, and I've now owned it for over 4 months, putting over 6,000 miles on it. So there's a lot that I want to share with you guys if you are considering buying a 2025 either gas or hybrid Toyota RAV4. Before this generation is gone, chances are you'll still be able to buy one for the next 6 to 9 months, as Toyota hasn't officially revealed anything concerning the new generation. But I think after about 7 years of production, we all know that the new generation is coming. So today I'm going to share my thoughts and opinions after owning this, and a few of the reasons why you might want to consider buying the end of this current generation rather than the very beginnings of the new one. And if you get anything out of this video, please consider liking it. Comment your thoughts and opinions below, what you agree with, what you disagree with, and subscribe if you haven't already. Otherwise, let's get right into it. I would say that the first and maybe one of the most important reasons to consider one of these is you already know what the powertrain is, and it's been out for 7 years just in this platform, as well as a very similar powertrain in a few other platforms, and even the Mazda CX-5 these days. So you basically know what you're getting. You basically know exactly what the flaws are, and if you have an issue with yours, you just Google it, and you'll find a forum full of other people who have experienced the same things, and even the fixes for what they have done about it. But whether you are going to consider the hybrid or the non-hybrid, this A25A engine is basically the core of either one. It is an Atkinson cycle engine, which might sound like a silly, extra complex technology. All that means is it has direct and port injection, so it's going to keep the back of the intake valves clean, basically giving you less overall maintenance and more efficiency throughout the various fueling and injection methods. It also has a CVT, and while I don't think the 8-speed is necessarily bad at all in the regular non-hybrids, most people have a good experience with them, the CVT that's hidden underneath this vehicle, it's a planetary gear set. So it's basically stationary gears that rotate. They all look very heavy duty. They don't look like they're driven by a chain. There's some CVTs that are not planetary gears like this that actually have chains that are made up of a bunch of little components, almost like staples. They're held into place with the pressure, the friction, all the things. But this is just a very solid, proven powertrain that some people have gone over 400,000 miles without even changing the CVT fluid. I don't necessarily recommend that, but it is really cool to see what this engine can do, and the fact that we know all about it. I don't think that Toyota's going to drastically change for the new generation. We already know that the new generation Toyota Camry has a few more horsepower, a little bit better tuning, but they dropped the non-hybrid. So I know a lot of you guys at home, you don't necessarily want a hybrid, you're not ready for one, or you don't want to spend a few $1,000s extra for one. And right now, you have a choice, which is pretty cool. My next reason has to do with the financial cost of one of these. There are over 1,200 Toyota dealerships just in the United States. I know where I live in this country, that's less than half of the total RAV4 sales. So there are a lot of Toyota dealerships. Thankfully, Toyotas do keep their value really well, especially proven ones that people know are reliable, people are familiar with, such as this. But also, Toyota dealerships sometimes have been known to be a little bit greedy with their markups, not selling below MSRP just because they know there's going to be a buyer for their vehicle at some point. And if you wait for the new generation, not only do you maybe risk having to travel pretty far from home to avoid a silly markup, which I never recommend you pay, but you also probably aren't going to be getting discounts below MSRP for a while, especially on a platform like this that doesn't necessarily have any trouble selling. And we can see that through the new generation Tacoma and 4Runner and a few other Toyota vehicles that have come out recently with the new generation. But these, I got about $2,000 off sticker. I got just the perfect deal, the perfect situation for mine. But I did have to travel well over 100 miles to a bigger area to find a dealership that was very high volume and willing to make a quick deal and get a good deal on my trade-in. It's going to be a lot easier to get a good deal on one of these, especially as we enter the middle and end of the year eventually compared to the brand new one. But also the new one, especially if there is not a non-hybrid version, you can probably expect at least a $3,000 premium over the current price of where these start at. And if you don't believe me, just look at the Toyota Camry. Last year, you could get one for about $26,000 for the lowest base model LE, and now the cheapest one you can get is about $3,000 more. And that's kind of sad and disappointing. Another thing I like about this generation is it's not overly large, it's not overly bloated. I think if you like this generation, you like it. I at least like it a lot more than the older generations that used to be more curvy. I do think there was some charm and characteristic to the earliest 1 or 2 generations, but the third and fourth one I wasn't the biggest fan of, other than the fact that you used to be able to get a V6 in these. But the fact that you already are very familiar with it, I think really is a nice thing. It doesn't stand out from the crowd, so if you don't want a flashy vehicle, you're probably not going to buy a Toyota RAV4 anyways. So this, while looking fairly aggressive, while still having a lot of accents and features that people like, it does blend into the crowd pretty well. And if you do like to modify your vehicles, all the aftermarket parts that are probably going to be made for this, I'm sure, are at least 80% already out there. So if you want a lift kit, if you want wheels and tires, if you want to do some subtle changes, you can already get that stuff, and you don't have to wait for new companies or existing companies to create new products, because it also takes a while for companies to decide that there's a demand for those products. But when you get this, you already know everything lined up that you might want to purchase and buy for it, which is kind of cool. I also really like the MPG that I've been getting. Now that we're finally getting 50 and 60-degree weather, just a couple days ago I did about a 250-mile trip, and I was able to get about 42 miles per gallon. That was a mixture of 55 and 65 mile per hour highway, just flat cruising straight the whole time. That's pretty cool. You'll also notice it's only about half on the fuel gauge, so I might be able to go up to about 250 more. Even though it speculates 193, the speculation probably is more accurate than the needle placement, because you usually can go almost 100 miles, or at least 70 or 80, before the needle even comes off a full. But still, about 450 miles of range. That is pretty cool now that the weather's warm. And that's even having to use the HVAC, having some of those systems on. But this also doesn't really sacrifice power because it is a hybrid. It actually can launch across intersections pretty well. There's actually a few places that I'll sometimes commute where it's a 65 mile per hour highway, 2 lanes each direction, and there are actually roads that can cross both. So you might be sitting at the stop sign for a couple minutes waiting for a very clear margin gap. But then you can put the hammer down in this and you can launch across, and you can feel just fine and very quickly realize you can come off of the acceleration. And I'll show you just a simulated example of that here. But it's cool that because this has a 2.5 liter naturally aspirated engine with electric motor, that also helps to compensate for our poor altitude where I'm at. You really don't have to worry about power delivery at low speeds, especially compared to something like the new Equinox with the 1.5 liter turbo engine. You make no power when there's no boost kicking in, so it can be kind of sketchy, kind of scary at times to accelerate across the highway where there is oncoming perpendicular traffic like that, if that makes sense. So I'm pretty impressed with this, the overall capability that the powertrain and the vehicle has in its driving characteristics. So while no vehicle is perfect, including the RAV4, and those of you who watch my channel regularly or have seen some of my other RAV4 update videos, you know I've knocked it where it justly deserves it. But overall, it really is a good vehicle, and I do think that this current generation Toyota RAV4 is going to go down in history kind of like the 3rd generation Tacoma, kind of like the 5th generation Toyota 4Runner. I think once it's gone, people are going to be sad that they missed their opportunity to buy one new, and used ones do seem to keep their value pretty well. Maybe not as good as those body-on-frame Toyotas, but I do think that these are a vehicle that you really can't go wrong with, especially if you do watch my video on the 7 issues that it has. If you do know the flaws that this vehicle might, have that interrupt your daily routine, your lifestyle, and make some of the ease of having a vehicle more difficult for you, overall, and for the majority of people, this is a fantastic option, and no surprise why a million people buy these every single year. So anyways, guys, if you got anything out of my thoughts and opinions on the current generation and why you might want to consider this before buying a 2026 Toyota RAV4, please consider liking my video. Comment those thoughts below and subscribe if you haven't already. Otherwise, I wish you the best, hope you take care, and until next time, see ya.